Hello students, welcome to Notebook. You might have heard of the concept of the great chain of being, originating in ancient Greece during the times of Plato, Aristotle, and Proclus. This concept, a part of medieval Christianity, decreed that all forms of life and matter belonged to a hierarchical structure or ladder. God was at the top of this hierarchy and minerals at the bottom. Leonardo da Vinci, the 15th century Italian genius, made the simple yet profound image of the Vitruvian man on basis of this concept. He also borrowed from the ideas of Roman architect and author Vitruvius from antiquity while sketching these superimposed figures of two men inside a circle and a square. The Vitruvian man, a triumph of science, art and philosophy, conveyed that man was at the middle of the great chain of being and at the center of the universe. The image also expressed the Renaissance worldview of humanism, which placed human beings at the center of everything. It argued that humans could choose their individual destiny and had the power to bridge the gap between the terrestrial and celestial world. The Italians, whom the radical ideas of humanism originated, first wished to free themselves from the orthodoxies, rules and severity imposed by the Catholic Church on human beings. They defended man's pursuit of power, material wealth, and the comforts of life against the Christian doctrine, which preached a life of austerity and discipline, renouncing all pleasures. These new radical views of humanism and individualism embraced the idea that a human personality was multifaceted and our lives are full of possibilities. They discarded previous feudal traditions according to which human beings belonged to three orders: the clergy, the nobles, and the peasants. The humanists thought that they were reviving old Roman and Greek traditions and restoring civilization by making spectacular advancements in the arts, sciences, culture, and philosophy. They were saving human civilization from the dogmas and the debilitating influence of the Church in the Dark Middle Ages. During these times, that is before the 15th century, especially between the 5th and the 9th centuries, human beings were taught to consider their earthly lives a punishment for their sins. They had to perform penance or hardships to get rid of their sins. This was, however, an oversimplification, and many of the ideas that the Italian humanists claimed to be modern, New Age, and radical in the 15th century had their roots in the past in the 12th and the 13th centuries. The intellectual movement of humanism started in 14th century Italy, reached its peak in this country in the 15th century, and from there it spread to the rest of Europe. The word humanist can be traced back to coinage of the term humanitas in ancient Rome to denote culture. Cicero was an ancient Roman lawyer and essayist. The Italian humanists were trying to revive the ancient glorious Roman culture and traditions in their studies and everyday living. They were focusing on the study of grammar, rhetoric, poetry, history, and moral philosophy instead of cultivating and practicing religion. The masters who taught these subjects were called humanists, and they encouraged learning through discussions and debates. Francesco Petrarch, an early Italian humanist and poet, popularized the study of ancient Greek and Roman texts and came to be known as the founding father of humanism and Renaissance. The earliest universities in Europe, like the universities of Padua and Bologna, had been established in Italian towns. The ideas of humanism were cultivated in these institutions and propagated through them. Law was an important subject of study in these universities, as the demand for lawyers and notaries who could write and interpret rules and agreements increased. The Italian towns were flourishing with trade and commerce activities around this time. Ideas of the Renaissance or rebirth of ancient cultural traditions and humanism also spread from the University of Petrarch's hometown in Florence. Florence became known for its rich cultural life, and Francesco Petrarch, Dante Alighieri, who wrote on religious themes, and Giotto, who painted lifelike portraits, were the torchbearers. Dante Alighieri wrote on religious themes and Giotto painted lifelike portraits against the past tradition of painting stiff human figures. The figure of the Renaissance men who honed a wide range of interests and skills emerged in Florence. Leonardo da Vinci was one such Renaissance polymath with interest and aptitude in science, arts, architecture, anatomy, engineering, mathematics, music and cartography, etc. Artists in Italy were excited with the material remains of ancient Roman civilizations like works of art. The Renaissance sculptors wanted to learn from the well-proportioned human bodies found in the sculptures of the past and create similar figures. Donatello's lifelike statues were famous in the 15th century. The study of modern physiology also emerged during the Italian Renaissance, and a Belgian professor of medicine at University of Padua, Andreas Vesalius, was the first to dissect the human body. Artists and sculptors associated with medical schools to study human anatomy to make their works more realistic. The painters were equipped with knowledge of geometry, an understanding of perspective and the use of colors to create variations in quality of light in the paintings. They also used oil as medium, which gave the paintings their vibrant colors. The paintings also absorbed Chinese and Persian influences by coming in contact with the Mongols. The aspiration to create a three-dimensional effect in the paintings and depiction of the lifelike figures in art and sculpture tells us that Italian Renaissance was a time of realism in the arts. The popes, rich merchants and the aristocratic class employed architects to construct buildings in the classical style of imperial Roman architecture. These buildings were also decorated with paintings, sculptures and reliefs. Some of the artists in this period were equally talented painters and sculptors like the renowned Michelangelo. He painted the ceiling of the Sistine Chapel and created the sculpture known as the Pietà. Filippino Brunelleschi was a sculptor who went on to design the wonderful Duomo of Florence. With the emphasis of humanism and individualism, artists in this age came to be recognized by their names. In the previous ages, the identity of the individual artist was often undermined by the guild to which they belonged. Some of the chief innovations of the 16th century Italy was the adoption of printing technology, firearms, compass, and abacus. The knowledge of printing technology originated in China and traveled to European countries through contact with the Mongol rulers. Earlier, intellectual movement had remained confined within specific regions because of the lack of printed material. The Renaissance ideas quickly spread as copies of books printed in Italy were widely circulated within the country and beyond. Hundreds of people in Italy cultivated the habit of reading, leading to increasing levels of literacy. 150 copies of the Bible were printed in 1455 in the workshop of Johannes Gutenberg, the German creator of the first printing press. All classical texts, mostly in Latin, had been printed in Italy by 1500. Although Italy was brimming with innovative ideas of individualism, humanism, and citizenship, women did not have the same status as men. They were excluded from public education, public life, and public roles. The sons took over their father's family businesses, and all decision makers in the family and businesses were male. The dowry of the wives were often invested in the family businesses. However, the women had no say in the running of these businesses. Their roles were restricted within the household as homemakers. The wives and widows of merchants and bankers often assumed public roles or responsibilities of businesses if their husbands were unavailable or deceased. Two women who challenged the notions of the times and demanded opportunities and status for women were the Venetian Cassandra Fidel and the Marchesa of Mantua, Isabella d'Este. Cassandra Fidel believed that women could equal men's achievements as humanist scholars, and she was invited to give orations at the University of Padua. The brilliant Isabella d'Este ruled the state of Mantua in the absence of her husband. From our discussions till now, we can understand that the Italian Renaissance produced a multiple of texts, art, sculpture, architecture, and textiles. These enable historians to study the vibrant life of this period, the material remains of which have been preserved in archives, art galleries, and museums in Europe and America. The early definition of the term Renaissance to describe the cultural spirit of the age can be found in the writings of the Swiss scholar Jacob Burckhardt. He broke away from his teacher, the German historian Leopold von Ranke's definition of history. Ranke had limited history to the study of states and politics. Other than consulting government files and papers, Jacob Burckhardt began to study the architecture, paintings, and literature of the times. His study of the Italian Renaissance between the 14th and 17th centuries have enriched us with an understanding of the new humanist culture of the times. How did this Renaissance or revival of classical tradition start in the Italian cities? We will find out the reasons in our next video. We will also discuss the influence of other cultures in science and philosophy, scientific innovations in Italy, and the debates within Christianity during this time. See you soon. Till then, happy learning.